What's up, everybody? Straw Hats Are Cool here, and we are back again with another video. We're here again with another Market Watch video, and this is going to be our final Market Watch video of this year. So if things go according to the plan, this will be uploaded on New Year's Eve. I'm recording this the day before, December 30th, hoping to get this uploaded by tonight. So we'll see how things go, but should be the last episode of the year. So I do hope that you all have a wonderful and safe new year, and make sure, you know, if you're doing any sort of festivities to celebrate the holiday, just be sure that you are, you know, safe and responsible with whatever it is that you choose to do on the holiday. Before we get into today's video, as always, I do just want to mention that we do have the Discord. I will have a link for that down in the video description. So we've still got a giveaway going on over there right now for Starter Deck 2. That is the worst generation starter deck for green. Got a couple more starter decks to give away. I think I've got an extra Starter Deck 8 and 9, which we'll probably be giving away over there as well. So if you are interested in hanging out with us, do check out the Discord. And then, as always, if you're looking to pick up any cards from TCG Player, if you see anything that is mentioned in this video that catches your eye, do consider using my TCG Player affiliate link, as a small percentage of the purchase will go towards supporting me and the channel. And one last thing, just as always, thank you so much to everyone who is supporting me in the channel. We have now passed 1,700 subscribers, and we did so before the end of the year, so I really do appreciate all of you for helping me out and reaching that milestone, rapidly approaching 2K. Let's see if we can get there before the end of January. That would be really awesome to see. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the Market Watch, starting things off as always with our chase cards from the main sets, starting off with Manga Shanks, sitting around $1,800 right now. And, you know, kind of the same thing as I said last week. I think price hasn't changed a whole lot. It's still very expensive. You can see a couple listings sold cheaper, but I'd be very skeptical of those listings and would be surprised if the buyer ends up even receiving these cards, as there are some people who try and pull some scummy shenanigans on here to try and make some money. Fortunately, TCG Player is pretty good about getting you refunds and all that, though it can be a pretty lengthy process. So I do urge you to be cautious of listings like this, which are suspiciously cheap, though it does seem like the selling point right now is around $1,500. So probably wouldn't bite on this one if you're looking to pick up a copy of Manga Shanks, and maybe hold off and try to find something around $1,500, but it is still a lot of money, so do spend responsibly. Ace has been pretty stable around the $900 to $1,000 mark. Not a lot of change here. This listing is not from a verified seller, however, and it does not, they don't have great reviews, to say the least. So for verified listings, you're looking at about 1,200, though as far as sales goes, it looks like right around that 1,000, maybe a little more seems to be the price we're going for. It's always nice, especially if they've got the pictures and it's from a verified seller like this listing here, which sold for $1,100. So again, still very expensive, though Shanks has now definitely taken the lead. Shanks and Ace have been pretty similar in price for a little while, but Shanks has kind of slowly crept up and is now maintaining the lead for the more expensive of the two. Not a ton of sales and about the same price as where it was at last week. Don't see this one going up or down too much for the time being, though given what we're seeing with the growth of this game, I do expect that over time these cards will just continue to climb a little bit in price as we, you know, get further away from these sets being in print. Next up is Manga Usopp, and both Usopp and Sabo, which we'll get into a minute, have kind of finally pushed past the the barrier they've been sitting around. I think they've both been around 500-ish. Now, Soga King is pushing $700. And these ones are all verified listings that we have here. So I wouldn't be too cautious of these ones, especially ones like this where the store's got over 50,000 sales. And they are a certified hobby shop. So safe listing to pick up, though the price has gone up quite a bit. Though if you look at the sales, nothing has sold over that $600 mark. We had one sale on the $600 mark 4 days ago, but everything before that was kind of sitting around $500. So if you're patient, you might be able to find another listing pop up if these continue not to sell at this price. Though if they do start selling at this price, I don't expect it to come back down. But for right now, I would be patient, see if any cheaper listings pop up if you're looking to pick up a copy of Soga King. For Sabo, still a little under Soga King. It's at $650 thereabout. This one's not as surprising to me, and honestly, I'm surprised that it's still less than Soga King, because if you're really into blinging out your deck, and I know you guys are out there, this is a card you're going to want probably 4 of moving forward, as this card is quite good in Sakazuki, and it is quite good in some other decks, which we will talk about a little more once we actually start talking about the set 4 cards. Don't want to ramble too long here on our mangas, but Sabo is definitely a good card to have in the collection and is going to be seeing play for quite some time now, unless we get any changes that aren't expected, such as bans or restrictions. As far as sales go, last one that sold was at $640. There were some listings that did sell at a little under $500, but again, I'd be a little bit cautious of those listings being legit, so just keep that in mind. These again are all from verified sellers, so the Soga King and Sabo are definitely easier to get your hands on than the Shanks and Ace, as all these listings are from verified sellers, and most of them are even from certified hobby shops, so you can feel safe purchasing these if that's something you're looking to do. But again, it is still a lot of money to be spending on wet cards, so you spend responsibly. As far as our first 4 sets go, not any huge changes. Soga King and Sabo are on the rise, and Shanks and Ace are pretty stable where they've been at, but as I said before, I do expect over time these will gradually all increase just a little bit. So moving on to our set 5 mangas now, starting things off with Eustace Captain Kidd. It is now pushing $1,000, so unfortunately, it seems like the second wave shipments for set 5 were not all that large, and has not helped a whole lot in terms of sealed product or our chase cards like the mangas and signature Luffy. So this one was a bit cheaper last week. I want to say it was around $800. Now we're pushing $1,000. But again, keep in mind, there's really only been one listing that's sold around this price. Everything that's been selling before that has been around that $800 mark, if not a little less. So I'm growing more and more skeptical of the fact that we will get a generous reprint for set 5, but I'm still holding out hope. I still want to say you should probably hold off on these cards, as hopefully over time they will kind of correct themselves. I really do feel that with it being the holiday season and all that, and the fact that product is a little bit scarce right now, the prices are a bit higher than they should be. But you know, I can't see into the future or anything, so I could very well be wrong about that. Next up, we've got Law, and again, this one did get bought out a little while ago. They are starting to sell around this $1,300 mark. But again, same thing I said with Kidd, I do feel that this is a little bit inflated right now. Though Law is a very popular character, and despite the card not being at all playable. And again, I think playability really shouldn't be a huge factor on these, but I do know there are people out there who will play these in their decks. But with that said, I think largely the same thing as Kid. This card is a little bit inflated right now due to product being scarce and just how hard it is to find sealed product right now. But hopefully as time goes on, this will eventually correct itself. So, you know, so far my predictions on this have not been very good. I really thought that the allocations and whatnot for set 5 would be a little better than what they were. Seems like honestly allocations weren't even all that bad, but the demand for this game is just a lot higher than I think I had realized. So that's something to keep in mind there. And lastly, we've got for our mangas the Gear 5 Monkey D. Luffy, currently sitting at $3,300 right now, which is absolutely absurd. My dreams of owning this card are just they're really starting to fade away. I don't think I'll ever be owning a copy of this card unless I get lucky enough to find some product and open it myself. Initially I'd said this is one that I was just gonna buy, assuming that it was gonna be around $1,000 like the other mangas were at most on release, but I guess I should have known, given that it's Luffy and it's Gear 5, it's from the anniversary set, blah blah blah. Probably going to be a little bit harder to get than any of the others, but this is definitely exceeding my expectations. I really don't know what to say on this one because unlike Law and Kid, honestly I just see this one going up, but hopefully I'm wrong. And if allocations do get better and product becomes less scarce, hopefully this will come down in price. I wouldn't buy one of these, but if you're a hardcore collector and you've got the money to do it, I suppose why not? But hey, you do you. Lastly, we've got our Oda signature Monkey D. Luffy. This one is sitting around $2,200 right now. And I received a lot of comments on some of my past videos about people being very confused as to why this card is so much less than the manga Luffy, because allegedly, and I don't know how accurate this is, the rates on this card are around like 1 in 20 cases is what I've heard. Again, I'd be a little skeptical of how accurate that is, but given that the signature Luffy is about 1 in every 20 cases and mangas are around 1 in like 6 cases, I think is what I've seen flying around. But again, like I said with the Oda Sig rates, I'd be very skeptical of how accurate that is. I'm not sure how big the sample size we're working with here is, so just kind of rumors I've heard going around. But I think with the rates being about 1 in 6 for a manga and 1 in 20 for the Sig, the odds of specifically pulling Luffy are still about the same, and I just think that this card being a manga card, collectors are a little more attached to this card, I guess. This one is definitely more sought after. Just, you know, it's got iconic panels on it. It's Gear 5 Luffy. I feel like there is a bit of a Gear 5 Luffy tax right now, so that's something to keep in mind. And while the Oda Sig art is gorgeous, there is also the regular variant, which still has the Oda art on it. Nowhere near as cool and definitely not as sought after, but it is more or less the same art, and this one's a little more unique, especially with the manga panels in the background. So I do think that the manga will continue to outvalue the Oda Sig, but I think they'll stay fairly close in terms of pricing. So that is it for our chase cards. We're going to go ahead and jump now into OP01, starting off with our leaders. Not a lot of change here. Everything is more or less the same as it has been. No, I do think Odin has kind of dropped down a little bit, and Luffy has jumped up a bit. I do think we brought this one up last week, though I think this is even a little more than it was last week. It's pushing $300 now, almost the same price as Zoro, which is a little surprising to me because while Zoro is seeing a lot less play than it was last set, it's still a playable deck, though it does have a pretty bad matchup in two of the three best decks in the format, in my opinion. Absolutely destroys Purple Luffy, but does not have a great matchup into NL or Sakazuki. So definitely starting to fall off in terms of play, and I don't see it picking back up anytime soon, as there is just a lot of low cost removal in most decks right now. So I think this deck's gonna have a hard time finding a place in the future formats. And Law, still expensive, about the same as it has been though. So now we've got our sealed product, and this is a little bit higher than it was last week. We're just shy of $500 now, but overall not a big change here. And as I always mention with the sealed product, if you're buying sealed product, definitely keep it sealed. Don't buy with the intentions of opening product, as you will end up losing a lot of money that way, 99 times out of 100. Otama, it is at $7.50 right now for an Odin common. This one is kind of shocking just how expensive it is for an uncommon, and it just kind of keeps creeping up and up and up with no signs of really stopping. Though I do feel that maybe going into set 6 especially, it might drop down a little bit, because I don't think red sees a whole lot of play next set at all. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think red. I think red really does start to fall off going into set 6. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one falls off a little bit in price as we get closer to set 6, but I could be very wrong about that. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, Otama is a very, very good card. And if you plan on playing red, it's definitely one you're going to want to have in your collection. So hopefully you've already got your copies of these by now, but if not, they are getting rather expensive. Next up is Sanji. Now I do want to bring up Sanji because this one has actually been going down quite a bit in price over the last month or so. And while it's not totally surprising, because red is seeing less play in this set than it was in the previous sets. Red has been pretty dominant up through set 4, but now going into set 5 is definitely taking a bit of a step back and letting other colors have their time to shine. So with red seeing less play, some of these red alts are starting to come down in price. Like with last week, we talked about Zoro's coming down, and that one is still down at around $90. But we are seeing that this Sanji is coming down in price as well. Though I would say keep your eye on this one, see if it gets any lower, but I do think that this could be a good one to pick up pretty soon, just because it's a Sanji, it's a 2k counter, it's a set 1 alt, and inevitably we will eventually get some more red Straw Hat type support. We've already got a searcher, and this is really, in my opinion, one of the better 2k counter cards in the game, purely due to the fact that it lets you play around opponents trying to starve you of resources. I think for that reason this card can and will still be pretty good in future sets when we get more support for Straw Hats in red, or just with the leader that has red as one of its colors. I definitely think this is a card that could shoot back up in price pretty quick, depending on whether or not we get the right support. And at the end of the day, even just in terms of collecting, it is one of the Straw Hats, one of the big 3, I would say, Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy. It's a set 1 alt. It's got a lot going for it, so with it coming down in price, it might be a good time to pick up some of these. X Drake, this is a rare from set 1, and it is sitting at $4 right now, and that's for a copy where there's only one available and it has 99-cent shipping. If we come down here, we do have this one here at $4.25 where you can buy a playset. They're pushing $5 now, and as you can see, in the last couple days they've shot up from around $1 to where they are now at around $4. And this is largely due to, I want to say, both. I think the real reason this one's going up is because of some success that the black-green Perona leader has been seeing in set 6 over in the East. And it may be seeing some success in some other decks as well, but this is definitely a very good card for the Perona deck. And I do think there was a build over there that did win. It was running kind of like a Don Quixote Supernova style package, and it did include some copies of X-Drake. So I think people riding the hype on that one a little bit. This one has gone up in price. Honestly though, I would say this is a pretty good time to sell, as I do think it will probably come down in price. While I think Perona is a strong and viable deck, I don't think it is like the most monstrous deck in the format that is going to soon start dominating over there. It's a good deck, and this card will see play in that deck. But I think honestly, as we get closer to set 6, this will probably come back down in price. Just given what we've seen with some of the other rares, like for example the other rare X-Drake from this set in purple. There was a point leading up to set 5 where that one was, I want to say, pushing $4 or $5 as well, and that one has since dropped back down to $2. And so with that in mind, I do think this is honestly a pretty good time to sell these if you've got extra ones in your collection, as I think they will come back down. Now, Eustace Captain Kidd, good old 8-cost Kidd. Those of you who have been playing the game for some time now may be familiar with this card, as it was probably the most oppressive card on the game's release in set 1. It was featured as a 4-of in a Yamato deck that did win a pretty large event over in the East. This is the green-yellow Yamato leader we get in set 6. So again, similar to what happened when the Perona deck won, those cards haven't been seeing play, but were featured in these decks that are now winning. Over here in the West, we do seem to have the tendency to see that a deck does well and just start buying the card in mass quantities. And I'm sure some of the people doing this are just doing it to flip a profit later, which does suck. But there are, I'm sure, also just players who are very excited to see these decks that they want to play doing well, and they want to be prepared for when we get the leaders released over here in the West. But it is sitting at about $20 right now. I'm unsure of how to feel about this, as it was quite low, around $5, and now it's like ×4 in price. I would say be skeptical of this. I feel like it should come back down, just given what we've seen with other cards that have seen similar price spikes. So I'd probably hold off for now, but watch this one closely if it's something you do want to pick up and have in your collection, because it could end up going up even more. And if that ends up being the case, I would probably just go ahead and buy them. But for right now, I'd say wait, be patient, see where things go. $20 seems like a lot for an SR like this. And just given like cards like Mihawk, which also saw price spikes, I think this one will come back down. No reason I think this card should be more than a card like Mihawk, or on par with cards like 5-cost Law. But we'll see where things go. Definitely will be watching this one closely myself. Everything I said about the regular SR applies to the alternate art as well. This one did peak at about $80. Luckily, only one person seems like have bought at this price. Again, I would say be patient. I think it'll come back down a little bit. The price is definitely a little inflated right now, in my opinion. Speaking of Law, I did just want to bring up Law because it is also starting to go up in price again. I think last time I mentioned it, it was $15-16, and now we're pushing around $20 again. I cannot recall if this one was featured in either the Perona or the Yamato deck that did well over in the East, but if it was, I'm sure that has been an influence on this one's price. But kind of what I said last time I brought it up, I still think this card is very, very powerful, and one that if you plan on playing green, I would probably have in your collection, just because I'm sure eventually we'll get more support for either Supernovas or Heart Pirates in green. In fact, we do see that in EB01 we are getting some support for green Supernovas, so this is a card that could end up seeing a price increase as well, depending on how that support impacts the success of decks that run green Supernovas. Same thing applies for the alternate art, though this one has still been pretty stable around $60. I still think this is probably a fine time to pick this one up because it is a set 1 alt of a popular character, and I would be surprised if it gets much lower than this. Lastly, for set 1, I want to mention Boa Hancock. There was a point this week where the cheapest listing was around 140, and it looks like even there were a couple that sold at 150. I don't think I ever saw it get that high. I'm not sure why this card is seeing a little bit of hype and almost was on buyout status. I guess it still kind of is. Only 12 listings left is not a lot, and with only 3 of those listings being English copies that are under $135. I'm not sure why, because I don't think this card sees any play in the sets that we're aware of to come. I have heard that from a pretty reputable source that in OP07 we'll be getting a Boa leader, so I guess if that is geared towards either Warlords or Kuja Pirates in blue, this could be a card that starts seeing more play again, but that's all very speculative as of right now, so take that with a grain of salt. So not sure why this one's going up, though it is Boa Hancock, waifu tax, all that good stuff, set 1 alt, so I'm sure that is the main factor on this one's price. That's it for OP01 though. Let's jump into OP02. Not a ton to talk about here, but starting off with our leaders, again, not a whole lot of change here. I feel like things have kind of settled, and this seems to be where prices are at right now. Once Newgate got unbanned, I feel like some of the pricings on these leaders were a little all over the place. Zanji at one point was around 100, Newgate was 200, these two were over 100, but things seem to have finally figured themselves out and prices seem pretty stable around here. All of these leaders have a pretty healthy amount of listings, though Ivankov is a little low, and I imagine this is because in EB01 we do get some blue impulse down support, specifically seems to be geared at supporting this leader in particular. But that is it for the leaders. Jumping on now. Actually, I need to refresh this. That's still got the gift thing on there. Yes. So everything I said there still applies. Okay. So moving now on to our sealed product. Sealed product for set 2 is going up a bit in price. And I would have to imagine this is because the overall value of this set is just going up, with cards like Borsellino as an SR being now a very, very expensive card. A lot of the SRs in this set are pretty expensive now, so I think with the overall value of the set going up, the sealed value price is going up as well. But again, don't buy sealed product with the intention of opening it at this price. First card on the list is Mino Koala. This is the box topper, and for those of you who aren't aware what a box topper is, for sets 1 and 2 there was an additional pack which was included with every box, just a little pack with one card in it that was on the top of a sealed box, and it had a full art version of an uncommon from the set. There were 6 types for both sets 1 and 2, so a total of 12 altogether between the two sets. And Mino Koala was one of them in set 2. It's at $10 right now, and that is pretty big price spike as it was around $3. But with the Impel Down support on the rise in EP01, this card has seen a price increase as we are getting a new blue-purple Impel Down leader, as well as a new Jailer Beast that we're aware of as of right now. And we don't even have the full set list out yet, so we could be seeing more support for blue Impel Down, or blue and purple Impel Down. So a little bit of hype for Impel Down Jailer Beast there. So I'm sure that is why this one is going up in price. Next up is Little Sadie, and while the cheapest listing looks to be $24, that is a lightly played copy with $5 shipping. So really we're looking at about $30. However, if you check down in your listings, if we're looking for a verified seller at near mint, we're actually looking at about $40 for this card. It has been bought out, and everything I said about the Mino Koala applies here. We're getting blue-purple Impel Down support in EB01. We've got a new Jailer Beast as well as a new leader, and we still don't know what there is to come alongside that. So I think the Hannibal leader looks like it could be pretty solid and has some potential, and I do think that this card is going to be one that sees quite a bit of play in that deck. So if that deck ends up being very good, I think this card will see a lot of play and could see the price going up even further. So I do think right now the price is a little inflated and it should come back down a little bit. However, we'll have to see what other support we get in EB01. Very glad that I did get the jump on this one and picked up some copies a week or so ago to finish out my playset. Next up is Magellan, and again on the topic of blue and purple Impel Down support, as well as the fact that this is a very, very good card in mono purple Luffy. The fact that it is only $30, it's actually come down quite a bit from where it was, is a little bit surprising to me. I do think that this one might be a little undervalued. So again, depending on what support we get in EB01, this card could see more play when that set releases. And as well as the fact that I think if mono purple Luffy does well at nationals, this card could also go up pretty significantly in price. Though the one thing I will also say about this card and purple in general is that following set 5 going into set 6, purple basically is dead color again. It sees almost no play at all. So really we get all these good cards in set 5. Mono purple Luffy's pretty good, but then going into set 6, purple more or less falls off completely. So I'm sure some people are aware of that, and that is influencing the price on this card to some degree. But with Impel Down support on the horizon, it's one I'd keep my eye on. I do want to mention that Suru for an uncommon is also getting pretty expensive. Similar to Otama, it is a very good 2K for a lot of different decks. Moving forward, it's still going to be played in Sakazuki. It's going to be played in Gecko Morio when we get set 6. So a very good card that's going to be seeing a lot of play well into set 6 from what we can see. So if this ends up being similar to Otama, and I do feel that this is really the Otama for black, it's a 1-cost 0-power character with 2k counter. It's a searchable type for the color, and it's on play, kind of helps you with your get more value out of your KO effects. So very good card, and definitely sees a lot of play going into future sets. So if you don't have your 4 copies of this one, I definitely pick those up now, as given how viable black looks to be moving forward, I definitely could see this one going up in price and eventually even competing with Otama for the most expensive uncommon 2k counter. Next up is Borsalino, and this card is one we've mentioned just about every week for, I want to say, about a month now, but this one really just kind of is the talking point of set 2. I do feel, I do believe this is now, I can't think of anything else that even comes close to this. The most expensive non-alternate SR card in the game. It's $51 right now. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's been kind of fluctuating around $30 and $40 for the past month. Goes up a little, goes down a little, but now we're definitely on the rise. And I do think that part of the reason for it now going up in price even more is not only due to the fact that this card sees a lot of play in Sakazuki. It is definitely a staple in Sakazuki, and I'm sure that's a factor for this one's price. But we did recently, or over in the East, they did recently get the release of Starter Deck 13. That is the Three Brothers Ultimate Starter Deck, featuring 3 new leaders, which include Luffy, Sabo, and Ace. And the Luffy leader in particular is a black-yellow leader, which is looking to be one of the better decks now in this new kind of OP06 format over in the East, as they are calling it. And it is included as a 4 of in most of those yellow-black Luffy decks, and it is looking to be one of the better decks in the current format over there. So with that in mind, I hope that this card comes down in price, but depending on what levels of success that deck sees over there, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. Though hopefully in similar fashion to Zoro, we do eventually get a reprint for this card, as in general I just think it's a very powerful card for black, and one that will be seeing play for many sets to come. So moving on, we've got Sakazuki, Gecko Moria, and now this black yellow Luffy leader that can and probably will be running some number of copies of this card in the deck. The alternate art for Borsellino is now pushing $140. So again, more price increase here. Everything I said about the regular SR applies here, with the regular SR being $50. I am not at all surprised that the alternate art for this one is now pushing $140, though hopefully things will come down from here. I feel like it was just a week or so ago that this one was actually starting to come back down a little bit, was around $70, $80, and now it's almost doubled in price from where it was at that point in time, which is a little bit absurd in my opinion. Now, last cards I want to mention for set 2 are Kuzan and his respective alternate art. And I may have mentioned these last week, but I'm mentioning them again because I do think there's a pretty high probability that there are going to be some Sakazuki lists that do well at Nationals that are going to be running some number of copies of this card. I have personally been running it in my list, as I do think it is one of the deck's better solutions to combating all of the yellow in the format. NL in particular, I think this card is very, very good against. And with that in mind, I do think this one could start going up in price again. We are seeing with the regular art for the card, it is starting to come back up in price a little bit again. Been around 20, starting to get a little closer to that $30 mark now. There are a lot of listings, but I wouldn't be surprised if this one starts getting played more. And if a list does well or even wins that's running this card, I could see it going up a lot more from there. Similar thing to the alternate art, it's been coming down. Actually, we see this one's just been on a pretty straight downhill trajectory, though the price hasn't fluctuated a whole lot. It's been pretty stable around this $55 mark. I do think that there is a place for this card in the format, and if it finds its place and does well in a deck that sees success, it could go up quite a bit in price. So if you don't have any copies of this card, or even just want one for your collection, I might consider picking that one up now, as I do think there is a chance that this one goes up from here. That's it for OP01. Let's jump into OP03. And OP03 is the set for this week that we have the least to talk about. But let's go ahead and start with our leaders. Katakuri up over $200 now, most expensive leader in the set. has been for a while. Nami is second, and with only 7 listings left, I do think there's a pretty good chance this one does see another increase in price. So if you haven't picked up your copies of Nami, it could be the time to do that, as with only 7 listings left, it is within buyout range, so someone could just come and pick up all of the remaining listings, specifically the ones in this $160 price range, and that would leave the cheapest listings at around $200. So it could end up rivaling Katakuri. I don't think this leader is especially good into the current format, though it is a Nami leader, and so I'm sure that is the main driving factor on this card. For sealed product, I want to say this has gone up a little bit again, but I'm not too sure. I don't really watch the prices on this sealed stuff all that closely, though from this price chart here, it looks like about a week ago we were at about 170. So at 190 now, we are pushing $200. So the price on sealed product for set 3 does seem to be going up pretty steadily. And yeah, don't know what else to say there. Again, don't buy these products with the intentions of opening them. If you're buying sealed product, just hold on to it sealed and hope that it continues to appreciate well over time, would be my suggestion. First card I want to talk about, same thing I said about set 1 kid and its respective alternate art. The Wanted Kid is also around $60, comparable to the alternate art from set 1. This is largely due to the fact that it is seeing success in set 6 in some of the green decks over in the East. Next up, we've got Usopp. This card was recently bought out yesterday. Looks like all of the listings are that like $8 mark were bought, and now the cheapest listing is about $25. There's no reason to pick up this card at $24. It was bought out. No one should buy at this price, and if they don't, the price should come back down. But if you do start buying at this price, there's a good chance it sticks around that price for a little while longer. But I do think it'll settle down probably closer to that $10 mark, maybe a little higher, as it does see play as a one-of in some Sakazuki list. I know I mentioned before that Hero ran it in his list, and he's a very good player, and did see success with this card in his deck. So again, if you haven't checked out Hero Shiro, he's got a channel on YouTube, has some pretty good in-depth guides for Law and maybe even Sakazuki now, but very good player, really seems like a really cool guy. So definitely check him out if you have not done so already. And lastly, for set 3, I do just again want to mention Katakuri and his respective alternate art. These cards are very, very good in the current format. They are played in both NL and Katakuri, which are both decks that I think can see a lot of success in the current format. And looking forward into set 6 as well, while it seems like Katakuri does start to fall off a little bit, he still looks to be viable, and NL actually seems to be looking to start seeing some more play in the current OP06 format following the release of Starter Deck 13, and this is still a 4-of in those decks. So if you haven't picked up your copies of these cards and have the intentions of playing NL in future sets, I don't know if now's the time to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if these continue to go up in price, as I still do believe that in terms of secret rare, these are far and away the most playable secret rare cards in the game, and also a popular character. I don't see this one really coming down much in price anytime soon, though if yellow does completely flub Nats and sees no tops, maybe it will come back down, but I would be surprised if that's the case, and do think that of the current secret rares in the games, these ones will be holding their value for quite some time. That's it for OP03. Let's jump into OP04, starting things off with our leader cards. Again, the leader cards in this set are still very, very cheap, though I do think there's still a chance that this Doflamingo does come back up. I've seen some lists running around that are seeing some amounts of success in the current format. So if a list for Doflamingo ends up doing well at a top level tournament, I could see this one coming up in price. But as for the others, I think they'll be pretty stable at their current price points, though depending on the support we see in EB01 for Black Dressrosa, we could see Rebecca come up a little bit as well. For sealed product, the sealed product for OP04 actually has gone up quite a bit. I want to say last week it was right around $110, but now it's pushing 140. So I think this is because there are quite a few cards now in set 4 that have seen a pretty big price increase for the last couple months. Set 4 has been kind of the slow point of the video, but there is actually quite a bit to talk about this week. So with the fluctuations we're seeing in prices for cards in set 4, most of them trending upwards, I do think that that is impacting the overall set value, which is causing sealed product to go up. So if you've been holding on to your sealed product for set 4, great, things are looking good for you on that front. Starting things off with individual cards, we've got Doflamingo, which the regular SR is now at $4. I know kind of as I started this video, doing these market watch videos, there was a viewer who commented on one of my videos and said that they picked up quite a few copies of this card, with their average price being like 75 cents, I want to say, something like that, maybe a little less. Things are looking good for you as this card is now on the rise. And again, this one is due to the fact that it did, I think this was included as a 4 of in both the Perona deck that saw a lot of, or won the event over in the East, as well as a 4 of in the green-yellow Yamato deck, which also recently won a large tournament over in the East. So with that in mind, I do think that this card is going to probably settle around this price now. Could see it going up even more if these green decks continue to see success whilst running this card. Same thing applies for the alternate art. I do think it's just a little bit more than when we talked about it last week following the big event win for Perona, but it also won in Yamato. So 2 waifu leaders in green seeing success with this card. I'm sure those are 2 decks that are going to see a lot of play just because they're waifus and people want to rep the waifus. So that will probably, they'll probably be pretty heavily played, and as a result, I think these cards kind of will hold their value around the current price points and could potentially go up even more if those decks continue to see success over in the East. However, we will have to see how Starter Deck 13 impacts the success of those 2 decks. Next up is Capone, and again, Capone, it's about the same price as where it was last week, but I do just want to keep bringing this one up because yellow still looks to be a pretty solid deck in the next set. And while I don't think this card sees play in the black-yellow Luffy, definitely still sees play in NL and Katakuri. And like I said, Katakuri seems to be slowing down a little bit in terms of representation, but NL, from what I can tell, actually looking to start seeing some more play following the release of Starter Deck 13, and this is still going to be a 4 of in that deck. So if you don't have these and plan to play NL, I would pick them up now, because honestly, just given how good this card is for a 2K in yellow, I don't really see the price coming down anytime soon. Next up is Heroes, and I'm actually going to talk about Heroes and the Gear 4 Luffy at the same time here. I'm only bringing these ones up because we are getting Dressrosa support in EB01, so depending on what support we get and if it affects either of these cards, the Kyros and the Luffys could end up going up in price a little bit. We do even see with the Kyros that if we check the last month, it has gone up just a couple dollars, and I'm sure that is a result of the support we are seeing for EB01, which could be potentially boosting the viability of the Dressrosa archetype. So these are some cards I would keep your eye on if you don't have them. They could go up in price if the support ends up impacting the meta in a meaningful way. Next up is Sabo. This is the SR and alternate art we're talking about here from set 4. And both the alternate art and the regular SR have more or less doubled in price. And honestly, I was a little surprised with where the price of these two cards were at last week. They were, I want to say this one, the regular was $5 or $6, and the alternate art was still around $30. And reason being, while they're not played as a 4 of in Sakazuki, they are still played usually as a 2 of in Sakazuki. And just given how popular that deck is, I was a little surprised with where these two were at price-wise. However, they've seen a pretty significant jump, and I don't even think this is due to the fact that Sakazuki is a very good deck in the current format, but this is very largely responsible to the release of Starter Deck 13 over in the East. In that black-yellow Luffy deck, this is a 4 of, and as I said before, I do think that that deck is looking to be one of the more viable decks in the format over there. This is a 5-cost Sabo, which is important because we do get some cards in that starter deck which allow you to play a 5-cost Sabo card from the top of your life for free, as well as buffing up your leader by 2000 power until the start of your next turn. So this being another 5-cost Sabo card in addition to the one that we get in yellow in the starter deck makes this a very, very playable card in that deck. And it's also searchable by the Garp, I believe, as he does just specifically search for Sabo cards. So very, very good for the black-yellow Luffy deck. It's a Luffy leader. Luffy's a very popular character. He's your protagonist. So I'm sure the deck's going to see a lot of play, and it's looking to be a pretty oppressive deck in the upcoming format. So with all of that in mind, these cards did see some level of a buyout. And while there are a lot of listings now, I think that they'll probably be pretty stable around this price, though I could see them coming back down just a little bit. I feel like the alternate art for Sabo should settle around $50, but we'll just have to keep our eye on this and check in next week. Then we've got your Sanji, the regular SR. I can't remember if it was up last week, but it's about $10 right now. Doesn't surprise me as it's a 4 of in NL and Sakazuki. And as I mentioned before, NL still seems to be pretty playable going into set 6. So this card will still be seeing play in that deck. The alternate art, on the other hand, has gone up again in price. It's sitting at around $65 right now. Honestly, this is where I think the card should have been at for a little while now, just given how heavily played yellow is. I feel like yellow is a pretty popular color in the game right now, as well as a very powerful one. This is one of the best cards for yellow. It's Sanji. It's an alternate art. Art's great. I think it will probably stay around this price for a little while, but wouldn't be surprised if it goes back down to around 50 either. So I think that $50-$60 price point is probably where this card is going to settle for the time being. And lastly, Yamato. Just want to mention this one again because, like I said, it looks like NL starts seeing more play in set 6. This is still a 4 of in most NL decks. So depending on how NL performs over in the East, this card could potentially go up even further in price. So that's it for OP04. Let's now jump into OP05. I guess I need to go ahead and pull up the leader cards, as I have not done that yet. We're just sitting here on our sealed product. Let's go ahead and pull up our leader cards. So in terms of the leader cards, there doesn't look to be a whole lot of change here. Corazon being the cheapest, Bello Betty and Sabo following right behind, or just a little bit ahead of Corazon. And then your big three here seem to be pretty stable at their current price points. As for sealed product, you got a sneak peek of this just a minute ago. Its sealed product is up over $200 now, which is baffling to me, but that just goes to show you just how high the demand for the game is right now, as well as just for this set in general, with it being the anniversary set and having 4 chase cards in it, definitely causing a lot of players and collectors to buy this set a lot more than any of the previous sets. So despite the fact that I think allocations for this game have been better than any of the previous sets, just the sheer amount of desire to pick this set up, the demand for it, definitely pushing the price way above where I thought it would be, but hopefully it will eventually come back down. So starting things off for individual cards, SP Nami is now up at $200 and they are selling at this price point. I'm not really all that surprised by this because, you know, your set 1 alternate art Nami is still pushing $300. This is another very good looking alternate art for that deck, so, or for that card, so not at all surprised that this one's coming back up. Very glad I picked it up for about half this price. So wouldn't be surprised. I doubt this one will come down at all, if any, but if we do start seeing more product being readily available, I imagine it will come back down, but if we don't, I think it'll stick around this price point. Baby 5, I think maybe we mentioned Baby 5 last week, again because of the success it saw in the Perona deck. I do believe this was also played in the Yamato deck, maybe? I could be wrong about that. I know they were running the Doflamingo, so maybe they were running this as well. I think they were running both the Bonnie Searcher and the Baby 5, but I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that, but I do believe this was also running the Yamato deck, so the fact that it's sitting at $30 right now doesn't really surprise me, but not a big increase from where it was at last week. Next up is Ulti. Ulti's gone up just a little bit in price from where it was last week, and I have seen some lists that some of the better players in the game have been using, which are running this card in Sakazuki decks in the current format. And if any of those players or any of those decks that use this card in it see success at a top level event, I think this is one that could go up in price. And I also think this is one that just could age pretty well, as it is able to be played in any monocolored leader which has blue as one of its types, and it's just a good card for consistency. Good, like an average stat line with counter is pretty good, as well as being able to search and potentially set up your next couple draws is very, very good. Next up is Borsellino, and this one's actually up a little bit as well, and there aren't a lot of listings left on this one. And going off of what I saw another player from, I believe, Singapore mention on Twitter, this was RJ. Shout outs to RJ, I love his content and have enjoyed getting to interact with him on Twitter as well. He had mentioned that while this card does see play now, it actually sees more play in OP06 from what he sees in Sakazuki decks, with some decks running 3 or even 4 copies of this card. So with that in mind, this is definitely one that I expected to go up in price, and if what RJ said ends up being accurate and true for our format over here in the West, I could see this one going up in price quite a bit as well. Next up, we've got Kaido. Now, your regular art for Secret Rare Kaido has, I want to say, almost doubled. I think around release it was around $4 or $5. Now we're looking at about $10. Card was definitely a little undervalued. It has been seeing success in Sakazuki decks. I've seen decks running anywhere from 1 to 3 copies, but I think 1 or 2 is probably the sweet spot for this one. So if you haven't picked up your Kaidos, I'd probably go ahead and pick them up now, as I do think this one is one that will also go up over time. On play to draw 4, I always thought it seemed like it was kind of a win more card, and it would be pretty hard to play, especially if you were a little bit behind or even. But man, you really do feel powerful when you play this card. Drawing 4 cards is really a very powerful effect, especially in a game like this where card draw is pretty limited. Same thing goes for the alt. I think this one was also up around $30 last week, but still stable around the $30 mark. And everything I said about the regular applies here. I could see this one going up more, especially if it sees success in a topping list, nationals, or any event for the OP05 format. Your Zoro Joro card is coming down in price, and this doesn't really surprise me at all, as the only deck that really runs this is Red Purple Luffy, and as much as I love that deck, I don't think it is the best deck into the current format. While I think it has an okay to even-ish matchup into Sakazuki, I don't think it does well, or especially well, into the yellow decks, and yellow is very prevalent in the current format, and I think that deck the Red Purple Luffy deck struggles against that deck. This card doesn't see play in Red Purple Luffy either, and with purple not really seeming to see any level of success in set 6, I'm not surprised with this one coming down in price. I feel like it'll be pretty stable here, but I wouldn't be surprised if it slowly comes down in price just a little bit more. As for Eustace Captain Kidd, kind of the same thing I said about Zoro applies here, only this one is played in Mono Purple Luffy. While this deck is incredibly good in the Mono Purple Luffy deck, as I mentioned with purple earlier when talking about Magellan, while this card is super good, and I think it's definitely a staple for any purple deck, purple more or less falls off completely following set 5 going into set 6, and doesn't really be seeming to see any signs of showing back up again. So with the fact that purple stopped seeing play going into set 6, I'm not surprised that this one's coming down in price, though what I said for Magellan, I'm going to say here as well. If Luffy ends up topping Nats or any big event for OP05, I think this one will go back up in price a little bit. So if you plan on playing Purple Luffy this set and you want to bling out your deck, I think now is the time to pick these up. Next up, Raw Blue Cheap, where we've got both our regular and our alternate art here, and they're actually down a bit. I think on release the SR was around 6-7 and the alt was around 50. Regular is around 4 and the alt is around 40. And I think these ones over time will go up in price, because both in Sakazuki and Gecko Moria, which are two very viable decks in set 6, this card is still played as a 4 of in both of those decks. So if you don't have these and have the intention to play black going into set 6, I think you're going to want to have your copies of these cards, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do gradually go up in price over time, though there is always a chance that if product becomes more readily available, they either maintain the current price point or drop down a little bit. But personally, with just how much play black seems to be seeing in the future sets, I think these are pretty good pickups for right now, and wouldn't be at all surprised if they go up just a little bit more. Same thing applies to Rebecca. It's a very good card in Sakazuki in the current format, as well as very good card in Sakazuki, as well as Gecko Moria in the OP06 format. So if you don't have your copies of these cards, I would probably pick them up now, especially just the regular SRs. I could see the alternate art coming down, and we do also have the SP art for this card in set 6, which I do think is a little bit better than this one. So actually for Rebecca, I think for the alternate art, it probably will come down. But if you don't have your copies of the regular SR and you don't care about the alternate art, I would pick these up now, because I would pick these up if you plan on playing black, as they are still very good in 2 of the best decks in the OP06 format from what we can tell. That's it for OP05. We're going to jump into our promos, and there's not a ton to talk about here, so hopefully we'll get through this pretty fast, as this video is now over an hour long. Starting things off with our Dawn cards. These Straw Hat Dawn cards are still rather expensive. However, your Yamato Dawn from the anniversary event has actually overtaken the Jinbei card. So unfortunately, Jinbei has been overtaken by the Yamato. Sad to see. Jinbei deserves more respect than that. But hey, these anniversary Dawn were, you had a 1 in 2 chance of getting this Dawn for every event you participated in. So they were pretty hard to get your hands on. Even the Luffy one is about $18 right now. And that one's actually got less listings than the Yamato right now. So there's a chance that one goes up just a little bit more as well. But other than that, Dawn cards about where they've been at. Your Winter Dawn's actually down quite a bit, I think. Gold Dawn, you know, I still like these Dawn a lot. If you don't have them, I'd get one. They look very nice. They're not foiled or anything, but I do like them a lot. The treasure or the store championship volume 2 winner, Eustace Captain Kidd, it got bought out. I'm not sure why, but it's about $75 right now, which, I mean, I don't think it will stay at this price. There were some selling at 60, but I don't know, this feels like a $50 card to me. But I don't know, if the collector side of things for this game continues to grow, I could see it, I guess, holding its current value. But honestly, I'd be like, I've only got one, so I'm gonna hold on to it. But if I had more than one, I'd probably start considering to sell it at this price point. So just something to keep in mind there. Next up, your store championship participation Sanji is going up again. This one I've seen go up and down and up and down, but back at about $20 right now with only 8 listings left. Not too sure what the reasoning for this one is, so if you do know, please let me know down in the comments. I'm curious as to why this one's seeing an increase in price, as from what I can tell, it doesn't see all that much play in the current format or into the OP06 format from the research I've done, but hey, maybe I missed something. Brûlée is still expensive, though the selling price for this card seems to be around $60, maybe $50 if you're lucky. But still a very good card in the current format, I think, in yellow, and could still be played in NL in future sets as well. Though, like I said, I think Katakuri starts to fall off just a little bit. So this card, I think, honestly, I would probably sell them now, because unless you're a collector or you're a player like me who just likes having your 4 of cards just in case these cards become viable again. But I think going into the next set, this card sees less play. Though, with that said, if you're like a Queen Coper like I am, Queen does get a pretty sizable power boost next set, and you're still going to run this card in Queen. The pre-release winner, Luffy, this was for the OP04 pre-release winner card. It's back up again, and I couldn't tell you why, because following the release now of Starter Deck 13, when the cards from that deck started getting revealed, this card shot up in price because people thought it would be good in that deck, but it's not. And from what I can tell, this is seeing no play in any of those decks, so I'm not sure why this card is going up in price again. But it could be that, like we talked about last week, it seems like the collector market for Luffy cards in general is pretty strong. This is a Luffy card, it's a winner card, it's a gorgeous card, so that could just be the reason for this one going up in price. Only 7 listings left, so could get bought out as well. Judge cards, not a lot of change here, though there are very few listings for Helmeppo left. This one could end up going up a little bit more. Tournament Doflamingo is actually up quite a bit. I do think I have some extra copies of that one lying around that I'll need to get listed now. And Queen is still the most expensive, but that doesn't surprise anyone because your regular Queen is like $40 still. For your winner cards, Tashigi is still expensive, doesn't surprise anyone. This Yamato is extremely overvalued because Yamato Coppers are crazy. And Jewelry Bonnie is back up to about $50 with only 3 listings left. And I don't know why this one ever got as cheap as it did. At its lowest, it was around $20, I think, last week. Now it's back up to closer to $50 with only 3 listings left. And this is almost 100% due to the fact that it was played in the Yamato deck that won a... I'm actually not sure if it won. It did very well at the very least at a large event over in the East, running 4 copies of the Bonnie, as they were running a Supernova and Dressrosa hybrid package, if I'm remembering things correctly. So not at all surprised to see Bonnie back up here. I think this is where the card should have been at from the very beginning, especially considering that Nami is still this high. I know it's Nami, but still, this card, it's still good. Law is still a deck that can be played. And then for our sealed battle stuff, the leader's kind of going crazy right now. Sucks that a leader is as bad as this is locked behind a $73 price tag. And it also sucks that these cards in general are locked behind these pretty absurd price tags. Like, I would like to have some copies of this Usopp. I kind of want to mess around with the green-blue Zoro Sanji lever, even though I know it's not good. But I want to mess around with it, and I think you could play this card in that deck because it's a 2 cost. But unfortunately, these cards are just incredibly overvalued just because of how hard they were to get. So hopefully they get some form of a reprint in the future. So that is it for promo cards. On to pre-release stuff. I'm gonna go quick through these because there's really, honestly, the pre-release stuff's been pretty boring. Not a lot of changes here. So these are your pre-release cards for set 2. Ice Age is still your most expensive card there, and I expect it to remain that way, as I honestly think this card starts seeing more play in set 6 than it does in the current format. I think most Sakazuki decks are only playing 1 to 2 copies of this card, but both Sakazuki and Moria run this card, and I've seen as many as 4 copies run in some of those decks over in the East. For set 3 pre-release cards, not a whole lot of change. Pilaf's still expensive. Virgo is still pretty expensive. And this one could actually even go up a little bit more because it does look like that Tashigi starts seeing less play as a 2K counter option, and the Virgo sees more play as a 2K counter option. And I think the reason for that is because we do get the blue Searcher Tashigi in set 6. It's a Searcher that can't grab Tashigi, so this card is just a little more consistent than the 3-cost Tashigi. Though I do think the effect on the Tashigi is quite a bit better than the Virgo. But I think you've got enough other good cost reduction options in the game that you can kind of offset it, and the consistency ends up being a little more valuable. For set 4 stuff, set 4 in general still, even in terms of pre-release cards, being the lowest valued. Though some of these Dressrosa cards could end up going up in price if we get good support in EB01. But other than that, nothing outrageous or worth mentioning here other than that. And then these first anniversary tournament cards, which I've grouped with the pre-release stuff because they were given out the same way that the pre-release packs were, just at the anniversary events. 1 pack with 2 stamped cards. Still no pictures on any of these, and they are kind of absurdly overpriced, so I would avoid these for the time being. Though if you've got a bunch of these, now is probably a good time to try and sell them. With the Onami's $95, I couldn't tell you why that card sees no play. but I guess Nami tax. So that's it for pre-release stuff. Closing things out with our starter decks as usual. Starter deck 4, a sealed copy, is now up over $100, which just sucks. I don't know what else to say. I talk about this deck every week, and I say the same thing every week. Please, Bandai, do something about this. These are your introductory products, which are meant to get people into the game. They should not be some of the most difficult cards and products to obtain in the game. This needs to get fixed. These cards need reprints, or they just need to reprint the starter decks in general. This should not be happening, or even just do the revision packs. We did the revision packs, and I think those were done just to kind of get they like had misprints, so they errata the cards, and that's what the revision packs are for. But just do like a revision pack style thing to include in the next main set. Find a way to get these cards, more of them, into the market. This needs to stop. For starter deck 6, same dealio here. Hina and Great Eruption are absurdly overpriced, but they are 4-ofs in the most represented deck in the format, so it's not surprising. Cheapest sealed one is pushing $80 now, but given the fact that these cards alone, 2 of in the deck, so there's 40, there's almost another 40. Not at all surprised that that's the case, but it just does suck to see. So hopefully Bandai does something about this, because these are cards that do see play into set 6, though Hina does drop off in terms of play in set 6. Helmeppo starts seeing more play though, and as you can see, this one is already on the rise. I think someone bought like 100 and some of them the other day, if I remember looking at the listings on this one. So if you don't have your Helmeppos, you may want to do that now if you plan on playing black in set 6. If I go through the sales history, one bought 20 there. Yeah, almost 200 of them there at $1.75. I'm sure they bought those with the intentions of flipping a profit later. And for starter deck 7, this one, starter deck 7, this one's also gone up quite a bit, with Charlotte, Linlin, and Brule also going up in price. Linlin is a 2 to 4 of in most yellow decks in the current format. I think kind of like 3 being the average amount played in NL and Katakuri. Very good card in the current format, so not surprised to see that this starter deck's gone up in price. There are only 9 listings left on the starter deck too, and that's got $10 shipping, so could end up seeing this one go up even more. It's not long, only cheapest verified one's at 60, so hopefully you picked these up a little while ago. I gonna give myself a little bit of a pat on the back on this one, because I did mention this one quite a bit, because I was pretty confident that it would go up in price, and sure enough, look at where we are now. But I've been rambling for almost an hour and 20 minutes now. I'm starting to lose my voice. That's all for today. So that's going to wrap up this week's Market Watch. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as it does help me out and means a lot to me. Trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. We're on the grind for that now. Getting pretty close, so hopefully we can hit that relatively soon. Will be really cool. And again, we've got Discord link down in the video description, as well as my TCG Player affiliate link. So consider joining the Discord and using that affiliate link if you plan on buying any cards from TCG Player. But other than that, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.